Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Reflections on Liber Cordis Scincti Serpente, Val 65, sub figura Adonai. The Book of the Heart Girt with the Serpent, Chapter 1, verses 2 through 11. Verse 2. Adonai spake unto VVVVV, saying, There must ever be division in the word. Adonai, the name of the holy guardian angel in this text, is the name of the holy unity whose kavod, or spiritual presence, is described in the Hebrew scriptures as resting upon the tabernacle in the wilderness, the prototype and model for Solomon's temple. The voice of the angel is an expression of the sacred whose presence is also an absence. The voice of the holy vision issues from the silence of the void place of the spirit. Therefore, the logos it transmits is always incomplete and thereby open to the future. There is always space for more creative inspiration and the renewal of ecstasy. As for the use of the 8=3 motto, VVVVV, in this context, all the holy books, excepting Liber 220, are said to be the utterance of VVVVV, the Magister, whatever the specific topic of the document in question. The voice of the Book of the Law is Iwas, as 10=1 Ipsissimus. This text addresses the theme of knowledge and conversation, yet its viewpoint is by no means limited to the middle level of the tree of life and the standpoint of the Ruach. The conversation between Adonai and VVVVV comes from Neshama, the proper domain of the angel, from which it symbolically descends upon the Ruach, like the kavod upon the tabernacle. It is a conversation between the heart and the snake, referenced in the first verse of the book. Verse 3. For the colors are many, but the light is one. The metaphor is that the diversity of thoughts are the colors that are many, while the unification of thought is lux, is the light that is one, representing the spiritual self-unification sought by the aspirant to knowledge and conversation. The whole range of our experience implicitly falls under the horizon of what Immanuel Kant calls the synthetic unity of apperception. There is, in the case of all of our thoughts and mental content, the categorical feature that these are all experiences of an apparent subjectivity. The qualification I, or mine, can be applied in principle to all of my thoughts. And when this condition of the possibility of my experience becomes explicitly understood by me so that it is also the basis for my ethical self-responsibility, this is what Kant calls enlightenment. It is a process that is in principle available to any educated adult in modern society and is therefore, in this specifically historically contextualized sense, claimed by Kant as potentially universal and normative. This process of coming to fuller self-consciousness can furthermore be enhanced by magical ecstasy. The knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel is the invocation of the magical ecstasy of self-consciousness, centered in the Sephira Tiferet, while also being open to the gnosis of the higher transpersonal levels of the Tree of Life. The unity of lux is not substantial. It cannot be objectified as a thing amongst other things, but rather it is the condition of the possibility of the appearance of anything. The metaphor of lux as light refers to the quality of light as illuminative of darkness, and of consciousness or mind as what the medieval Christian scholastics called the lumen naturale, or light of nature, which I interpret as the hermeneutical openness to the world of the human subject. Verse 4. Therefore thou writest that which is of mother of emerald, of lapis lazuli, of turquoise, and of alexandrite. Verse 5. Another writeth the words of topaz, of deep amethyst, of gray sapphire, and of deep sapphire with the tinges of blood. Everything is holy, declares William Blake, and further that there should not be one law for the lion and the ox. Each aspirant after spiritual attainment must seek after the personally unique formula of their creative self-fulfillment. The various precious stones listed in these verses all have Kabbalistic correspondences derivable from the relevant table in 777. However, upon investigation, these do not seem to imply any obvious interpretation to me. On a deeper level, this passage relates to the mystery of reincarnation. That is to say, when the natural person has undergone putrefaction, a new persona is alchemically regenerated, whereby the activity of the adept can function through a personality purified and consecrated to their deeper purposes. For example, after his magical annihilation, Aleister Crowley remanifested in the sphere of Jupiter, or Hesed, as a star shot forth from the abyss of the heavens to startle the earth. And Frater Akkad likewise remanifested in the sphere of the elements, which is to say Malkuth. Verse 6, "Therefore do ye fret yourselves because of this." As in the case of the syntax of the Book of the Law, pronoun usages, such as ye, etc., in Liber 65 are ambiguous who they refer to. While Crowley is being addressed by the voice of the Holy Book, so is any other reader, at least potentially, under some possible interpretation that might or might not prove magically useful to them, and should therefore not be excluded a priori from consideration. More generally, this passage counsels practitioners not to be distracted from their own part in the great work by giving undue attention to the progress, or more usually the lack of such, of others. We may assist others when asked and able, yet ultimately everyone must solve the puzzle of their own existence on their own initiative. In therapy, the analysand's belief that the analyst knows how to cure them from their symptom, Freud calls transference, and he furthermore insists that it interferes with therapy. For in psychology, only the patient, not the doctor, knows the secrets of their neurosis, and only they can will to adjust their relationship to their symptoms so they can be enjoyed instead of suffered from. The analyst can only help facilitate this process. They do not govern it. These principles all apply in a magical context. Ultimately, we all initiate ourselves, and while nothing stops us from assisting each other in the great work, in the end, we are only responsible for the pieces of the puzzle that concern our unique expression of existence. Verse 7, "Be not contented with the image." As Crowley frequently advises in his writings, mystical and magical results should not, in general, be treated as having the significance they initially seem to possess. The positive self-development sought by magic results from habits established by prolonged practice. The magician must stick with it for the insights gained to acquire their full significance. In particular, knowledge and conversation is a lifelong dialogue. Whatever dramatic breakthroughs occur must be equilibrated with the larger domain of psychological experience. Otherwise, obsession and neurosis results, with the added misfortune that the person in question can no longer course correct because they've decided they're already enlightened, and therefore no longer need to practice. More broadly, this passage alludes to the mystical tradition of the via negativa, or negative way, where the ground of being is approached through abstraction from positive mental predication. This is a species of dharana, which is then the basis for the arising of dhyana and samadhi. In other words, the evacuation of thought results in a void that is filled by the voice of neshama. Verse 8, "I, who am the image of an image, say this." There are traditionally two versions of the via negativa, which for simplicity's sake can be identified with the Vedic and Buddhist darshana, or philosophical positions or views. Theistic esotericisms, such as Christian mysticism and Islamic Sufism, are typically assigned with the former, while atheist philosophies like Thelema, existentialism, and post-theistic Judaism are positioned in dialogue with the latter. The Vedic teaching in the Upanishads and elsewhere is that behind the phenomenal world of appearances is an undifferentiated noetic unity, which is the true essential substance of reality. By quieting the mind from distraction by appearances, its unity with Brahman, the one substance, becomes apparent. In contrast, the Buddhist argument is that there is nothing ultimately behind the phenomenal world of appearances. There are only appearances. Therefore, following Hegel, appearance is itself the supersensible. Everything is illusion, which is non-dual with ultimate reality. This verse affirms the Buddhist position, not simply against the substantialist position of the Upanishads, but as their deeper truth. In Crowley's own Thelemic terminology, behind phenomenological experience of the metaphysical unity symbolized by the holy guardian angel and its attainment is the night of Pan, of the nothingness of the Kabbalistic zero. The I that speaks in this passage, or rather writes, a mode of deferred presence according to Jacques Derrida, is the voice of the holy angel, who affirms, perhaps unexpectedly, that their sacred image is not the projection of an underlying true self, the Atman in Vedantic terms, that is the substantial essence whose realization grounds subjectivity and objective truth. Rather, their image is simply the mirroring or projection of other images, and so on ad infinitum. There is only the self-reiteration of the image of the sacred, with nothing behind it in terms of which it is the truth with a capital T. Yet, looked at from the deeper understanding offered by the Buddhist style of analysis, this incomplete emptiness of the holy angel's being is actually the very truth it is communicating. For it means that the true, with a lowercase t, self, is likewise an open emptiness of being, which is creatively liberated to express its innate ecstasy through the self-projection of its true will, the magical voice that arises from the silence of the anarchy of being. Verse 9, debate not of the image, saying, beyond, beyond. One mounteth unto the crown by the moon, and by the sun, and by the arrow, by the foundation, by the dark home of the stars from the black earth. Knowledge and conversation is the beginning of attainment, not its end. Having affirmed that one is a divine being, the magician must now live their life in the light of that understanding. The symbolism of the tree of life provides a useful model of this process when treated as a fractal pattern that repeats itself at each stage of practice. The ascent of the middle pillar of the tree is represented in this verse as the movement to the crown of Kether via the black earth, Malkut, the moon or foundation, Yesod, and the sun, Tifereth, while the arrow is the path of Samet connecting Yesod to Tifereth, corresponding to Sagittarius the archer. Verse 10, not otherwise may ye reach unto the smooth point. Kether is the smooth point, because it is represented as a dimensionless point, connecting the nothingness and the unity so that each appears as if it is the other. It is furthermore smooth, because it gives no traction to take hold of, cannot be grasped or objectified, because it is the openness of being, in terms of which all things are incomplete and open in terms of their being. Therefore, one must likewise be open and incomplete, always learning and creating in order to attain, or rather embody, the principle of Kether. Verse 11, nor is it fitting for the cobbler to prate of the royal matter. O cobbler, mend me this shoe that I may walk. O king, if I be thy son, let us speak of the embassy to the king, thy brother. This is the Thelemic maxim to keep the planes separate, meaning that spiritual matters have no necessary precedence over practical concerns considered within their own context. Both are important, but mixing them up creates disorder and confusion. The relationship between the spiritual and the practical can usefully be compared to the Marxist distinction between the material productive base and the cultural superstructure. Without the base of practical matters, food, living situation, etc., being adequately addressed, it is not possible to layer a coherent spiritual practice on top of it. Even for traditions that practice ascetic renunciation of worldly goods, such as primitive Buddhism and Franciscan mendicancy, there is the built-in requirement that the religious laity provide for the sustenance of the renunciates. Note that there are two kings referred to in this passage. The first king mentioned is the holy guardian angel, whose son is the magician, as Christ is said to be the son of the heavenly Father. This king is also the brother of another king, who is Kether, whose mesla or influence is expressed by the manifestation to the magician of their holy angel. These are the heart and the snake, respectively. This also symbolizes the relationship between Atziluth and Bria, or the Kabbalistic zero of the night of Pan, hidden beyond the sacred image of the metaphysical unity. Love is the law, love under will.